Welcome to episode 27 of Bare Naked Bravery. Today we get to talk with Thomas O'Grady. We start out today's conversation with a short story of the moment Thomas broke Russian-Chinese code. And he won't tell us the year, which will tell you how top secret all of this is. Thomas is a scholar and a supremely excellent mathematician. And now, before you roll your eyes and tell me how much you hate math and don't understand it, let me just tell you that Dr. O'Grady explains it all so beautifully and in a way that anchors the math in so much meaning. Today, we talk about making changes in your life, setting expectations for yourself, and how to continue to adjust your goals as you attain them. Thomas shares stories about his experience as a Soviet Intelligence Operative, his determination during his education, and his fear of public speaking. Now, short story, his advice for public speaking is don't go to Toastmasters, but he expounds on that reasoning later on in the episode. Several weeks ago, we published our conversation with violinist Hal Grossman, where Hal and I talk all about stage fright and performance anxiety. And this conversation with Thomas O'Grady is a perfect follow-up, especially for those of us who love the analytics of life and comfort zones. You're going to love it. Let's jump on in. You're listening to Bare Naked Bravery, a weekly podcast hosted by me, Emily Ann Peterson. As a singer-songwriter, author, teaching artist, and creative entrepreneur, I encounter some really fascinating stories. I'm on a mission to reveal the depth and width of bravery and its benefits to creatives like yourself. More than ever today, our world needs bravery, unique bravery, from everyone. This is the place where you find it. There is no script or censorship today because that's how these facets of Bare Naked Bravery are in real life. So if you're listening with little ears nearby, please know that some episodes may contain mature language and subject matter. One of the easiest ways you can share bravery with the world is to send this episode to a friend or two. Send them an email, text, or tweet. Tag them in one of my Instagram posts. My handle is Emily Ann Pete. Or leave us a review on iTunes. It takes seconds and can be done from your phone right now. Again, we need more bravery in the world. So let's be brave together. Are you ready for some Bare Naked Bravery?
Yes.
Let's do this. Okay, so I am really glad you're here because I'm really curious about you breaking codes.
Oh.
What is this about? And then we'll talk about other stuff too, but.
Okay. Well, it happened whereby I was a Russian analyst. And it started out that I got a bunch of very rapid promotions because some things I did, including the breaking codes, that put in charge of 2/3 of all Soviet intelligence from the western part of Lake Baikal to the Pacific Ocean.
And this was which years was this?
This was quite a while ago.
Okay.
Hopefully that's a good enough answer.
Yeah, that's fine for me.
Okay. Anyway, what happens is it's really weird, and I can't really describe exactly how or some methodology for breaking. It's just you're looking at things. If you've ever seen the show Numbers or something like this, you're looking and all of a sudden it just pops out at you and you realize that you've found something and then you can break the rest of it. So it's really something that just, the mind grasps a hold of.
The only thing I have akin to that is staring at a Sudoku puzzle for forever. And then suddenly you get the number that makes the whole thing work. But that's not as impressive.
That's okay. Well, we'll give Sudoku a pass.
You're very kind.
And actually, one of the times that I broke the code, it was kind of interesting because afterwards, and I'm not sure to what extent I'll explain this, given this is being recorded, but I break the code. And it was one of these things where something was happening between the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, and China. So when I broke the code, it's kind of because everybody around the world's working to break these codes. And all of a sudden you break it. It's kind of like you won a worldwide bingo game. Wow, this is great. Wow, fantastic. And then all of a sudden I'm looking at the text as I translate it from the code. And they were fighting. The Russians were giving orders to kill Chinese, etc. So
wow.
it was like, it went from wow, euphoria to oh, dang.
Yeah, you went from winning the golden ticket with Willy Wonka to a very morbid golden ticket.
Exactly. So, because we had always heard since we were very young, gee, if anything happens between the Chinese and the Russians, we'll really be in trouble.
Wow. That's crazy. Well, I'm sure you have more stories to tell from that. And that door is always open. You can tell those stories all day long for me. But I did, because this is Bare Naked Bravery, I thought that we would talk a little bit about comfort zones, because I know you have experience with that personally, but also professionally. You are really well versed in supply, demand, numbers, systems, codes, all of that. And I think that comfort zones are very much a system that we put in place
for
our lives.
Right. And actually, if you read the back of my book, which is The Mechanics for Breakthrough Success, the phrase that I put up at the top, and it's really important for people for many reasons to think about this, not just for themselves, but for how they perceive other people. The distribution of IQs is the same whether you're talking about a small southern town, a ghetto, or some suburban neighborhood. What limits people is the environment that encapsulates them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about that, really, that is your environment. That is, in a sense, what becomes your comfort zone. So stepping outside of that becomes crucial. Now, for myself, it sounds great. I'm thinking from the, all this experience, and you see the stuff I've done recently. But I grew up very, very shy, very introverted, and I didn't think very much of myself. Some things happened that made me realize that I was a little better than I had thought. But during that time, I literally just was successful in a sense, sitting at a desk, et cetera, and within different areas. But for my first thing, step out of my comfort zone, of course, was really by pushing myself at school then afterwards. And then, well, I literally had decided when I was in the military that I wanted to do much, much better. And when I got to the end, I didn't think very much of myself. What happened was at the end of language school, which was for Russian language, there was a professor sat down with myself and somebody else. And he said to the two of us, he said, decide whatever you want to do in the future, because if you want to go to medical school, law school, that'll be far easier than what you just went through. And there was no question that that was the case, because quite frankly, in that language school at that time, because there was the threat of going to war, if you didn't, and they were threatening that you'd go across the street for advanced infantry training, there were people that had nervous breakdowns. Mm-hmm. There were people that committed suicide because they said they were going to fail out 70%, and they failed out a lot of people.
Wow.
So at the end, there was no question. Well, afterwards, I thought, gee, maybe if I'm not even good, but if I can push myself like the military pushed me so far beyond what I thought I was capable of doing. But that was all for them. Why can't I do the same thing for myself?
Whoa.
And what I decided was, gee, even if other people, let's say, have a higher IQ or something, let's say they're 100 and I'm a 90. I didn't know what the numbers were at the time. But I thought, gee, if we only use 10%, but I work 20% heavier than anybody else, I'm at 10.8 and they're only at 10. So if I just work harder, faster, furious, that hustle, that drive, determination, perseverance. So I had decided when I was going to go to my undergraduate university, I was going to push myself for 2.5 years, not even have a social life, just give it up. Now people would say, oh, but how can you do that? There's so many good things to do in college, et cetera. Okay, 2.5 years, get into the best law school, graduate school, whatever I do, which will influence me for the next 50. So I'm giving up 2.5 for 50. Doesn't sound hard. Most people can't seem to understand that, but that's really what it boils down to.
Well, I mean, when you look at those numbers like that, it's an easy decision to make.
It is, but what I've done is I've actually mentored and counseled some young kids on this. And what I would do is I'd say to them, and ask you the same question. While in school, have any of your friends or anybody said to you, oh, come on, you study really hard, you deserve a break, it's a time to take a break, come on, whatever. Everybody has.
I feel like I say that to myself every day.
Naughty.
I know.
But what I would do is I would tell them, and I give this advice, I said, find yourself some secure, out-of-the-way cubicle someplace in the library that nobody will ever know about or find. You've got a 6, 7, whatever it is, story library. Find it and go there to do your work and study. Then when your friends are gathering around and they're saying, oh, come on, we deserve a break. Come on, let's go. You've studied so hard. You really deserve it. Then you ask them, where are you going to go? Where are you planning on going? Oh, great, good. Great, I got to stop off and finish something up. I'll meet you there when I'm done. Now, I won't lie, but I also won't be done. So I have this thing about lying. I won't lie, but, but I will meet them when I'm done. Unfortunately, I never get done. And then the next day when you see them, oh, you missed it. We thought you were going to come. And said, yeah, I couldn't get my stuff done in time. I sure wish I had been able to be there. Because, yes, I do wish I would have been able to be there, but I wasn't able to be because I had other priorities.
Right.
Other thing I mentioned to people in college that are going to college is that you will probably not be friends in 3 years after you graduate with more than 1 or 2 people that you knew in college, no matter how good and great that group and everything else you think is. Most of them turn, oh, no, we're going to be friends forever and stuff like this. No, you're not even going to know each other.
Yep. That's equivalent to just being Facebook friends.
Exactly. Although I try to get to know some of the people.
Totally.
So you have to realize that. And that gets into some of the areas of the comfort zone as well.
I think that decision point, though, that you're talking about, the decision point to just do something, that you're going to give it the quote unquote college try and just do it. That is really a really important part of leaving your comfort zone.
Right.
But it's also a really important part of making a really big life change, like a life habit change or.
Okay. I'm going to add one thing to that.
Okay.
When you are looking to leave something or start something new, that's a goal. 95% of New Year's Eve resolutions, which are goals, never make it through the 3rd week of January.
It's so sad.
Well, what's really sad is that those things are usually things like, I'm going to eat better, I'm going to exercise regularly, I'm going to lose 10 pounds, I'm going to do something. They're all simple stuff. How are you going to change your life if you can't even do that for 3 weeks?
It's really sad.
So actually, that's what in my book, I did a lot of studying about that. And that's what a lot of that is in, because I've been doing this and trying to improve myself for, 40 years. And part of it is, I thought for a long time, many, many years, probably a couple of decades over, well, what can you do? What drives you? And what drove me to make that change and go out that way? Because you have to have that for the commitment. And let me ask, stop me if I'm putting you on the spot.
Okay, that's what this is for.
When you had a test or a paper due in school, when did you do it? When did you study for your test?
Well, I was homeschooled in high school, so it would just be whenever. But in college, I know that the best time that I used to study was actually in the class, in writing notes and taking the right kind of notes. I would cram in the evenings, of course, and then maybe pull an all-nighter, which never worked.
Right. And that's the thing. And you ask most people, and most people, almost everybody answers the thing. They will study the last minute, the last 2 days, the last night before, things of that sort. Mm-hmm. And I ask them, well, why? Why'd you bother?
Right. I mean, well, I know from
Take that as
personal experience that when I did that, like when I crammed for the test, I know that I didn't feel any better about the content of the test
right.
after I crammed than I did before I crammed.
Right. Now, but forgetting about you for a minute, what do you think the response was when I said to people, why did you bother to study then the last minute, the last couple of nights?
I imagine it's stuff like you're supposed to.
You're afraid of.
Yeah.
You're afraid of failing. You're afraid of doing. So the only thing that got you motivated to do the work you needed to do was that you built a fear up or had a fear of some consequence. So if you want to make a life-changing event in your life, developing that fear is probably one of the best possible modes. For example, what I did in undergraduate school, because I wanted to be a top student on a regular basis, I had some dreams and aspirations, like most people, of where I'd like to live and what kind of situation I'd like to live in, et cetera. But when I was doing that, I was looking at, those dreams, but was that going to motivate me? Well, what I did was, on a regular basis, I would drive through the neighborhood right next to my own, which wasn't a great neighborhood. It was better. And the neighborhood right next to mine, the people were very nice. They had very nice lawns trimmed, et cetera, like this. They were all working class people, et cetera. But what it reminded me of as I went through there, that their vacation once a year for 2 weeks was usually something like they'd have a couple of barbecues in their backyard. Maybe they'd go to the beach. Maybe once every decade, if that, they'd go on a vacation maybe to Florida or to the Poconos or someplace like that. And that was it. So every time I drove by, it made me realize what I had to do to get away from this as being my future.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really crucial to, I think a lot of people see drive and determination as that like blinders on, only seeing the thing in front of you. But there's a lot to being said about keeping your eyes open,
right,
for all of the options should you choose to deviate from your plan.
Well, if you choose to deviate, you have to be careful. Your deviation has to be based on a learning experience, because the mind will make you feel very comfortable about a comfortable option that isn't much work.
Right.
So what you have to do is you have that goal in mind, but as you're moving through towards that goal, you have to really find something that you have to realize and motivate yourself to be moving away from where you are towards what you want to be. And that's where that fear comes in.
Would you say that fear, or I mean, what would be the opposite of fear? Comfort?
Comfort, yes. Stepping out of or being pushed out of your comfort zone.
Right.
But this was only the first thing for me from as far as the comfort zone, because I've done this many, many times now. And when I got to Berkeley, because going from Hofstra University to Berkeley for the PhD in mathematical and statistical economics, that's kind of like going from high school to the NFL. I mean, there's really everybody else at school that year, they came from Harvard, MIT, Stanford, Berkeley, Princeton, Cornell. Those were the schools they came from, and I came from Hofstra University. I didn't even know what the graduate course looked like, let alone what the program would be. They had all already taken it, or at least audited it. Some of them had taken not only that, but courses beyond it. So they were doing all repeats, and I was doing it for the first time. That scared the heck out of me. Now, you can take two avenues. You can say, oh my gosh, this is impossible, whatever. And, oh, it's unfair. There's all kinds of excuses people can come up with. And that's what satisfying yourself inside your comfort zone can do. What I did was imagine that, oh my gosh, I cannot let failure creep in. Otherwise, I'm back there. All I've done is lost.
Wow.
So again, using that same thing to motivate myself and, making it through the first year. And actually it was my third year. This was actually kind of funny. Gerard Debreu, a Nobel Prize winner, was walking back from the coffee room alongside me, and we're talking, etc. And he's asking me to do a dissertation under him. And I argued with him that I wasn't good enough. He said, yes, you are good enough. And normally you go around asking professors and begging somebody to be your supervisor, and he's asking me and urging me and pushing me to do a dissertation under him, and I'm telling him I'm not good enough, and he's telling me, yes, I am. And he said, I had you last year for a student. I know how good you are. I said, no, I only did good because you were such a great teacher. It wasn't until I woke up the next morning and I thought and realized, wait a minute, maybe I'm not so bad. So that was the first realization that I had that I was pretty good. When I was getting done with grad,
aside from getting to Berkeley, I mean,
well, there was there was a whole bunch of things I had done before that. I mean, the language, getting to be put in charge of all of that, getting into Hofstra. And at Hofstra, I was a top student. I was offered the Danforth Rotary Rhodes Fellowships. I was there were two faculty representatives to the Board of Trustees. Even though I was a student, I was one of the faculty representatives. I was in charge of budget and planning. I was invited to the president's house on occasions. I could call up the president of the university anytime and I'd get immediately through, or stop by his office. And I wasn't one of the rabble rousers. It was just dialogue. And then getting into Berkeley and getting that. But then when I got to go the tour around the country for interviews, I was this one place.
And what were you doing that for?
Well, at the end, what happens is you're going on interviews basically for your first job. And what happened was, and at Berkeley, because you're coming out from there are universities and businesses all over the country are asking you. I mean, what happens is they have a national meeting whereby you can take these half-hour appointments, and you can also, or lunch or a cocktail party or something like this. I had 21 interviews, 2 lunches, a dinner, and cocktail parties. And yet whereas if you had come from some university, there were several people from university, they had this room set up whereby people could find interviews. And you'd see people in there calling through things and trying to get interviews. And here all the interviews I had were requests, which is the power and the sense of the university. And this is one of the things I urge people to do. I mean, what I knew was get into and do the best you can at the best possible place you can, because that truly is a ticket for the rest of your life. Yeah. And that makes a difference. But I still had weaknesses, and I knew something. It's actually a chapter in my book. Know your weaknesses and go on a diet. Everybody's telling you about your strengths, but it's your weaknesses can hold you back. And
especially if you're not aware of them, or you're trying to ignore them.
Or they're really foreboding. They're really huge. Like mine, I was afraid to stand up in front of people and talk. And here I was going to have to go on these interviews. And there was one that was an automatic. I was going to get the offer. There were several places like that. That's upon greeting, they said, well, you're going to get an offer. This is just a formality. And one was where they just asked me a question during this little seminar that they had me do. And the question was so obvious and simple that I froze. And I just stood there staring out at them and didn't know what to say.
Do you remember what the question was?
Yeah, it was something like, what's the utility function for what my model was? And I stood there frozen because it's almost a stupid question. It was so easy. It's kind of like, is it sunny out today? But anyway, it was just being in that position. They say that speaking is second only to being in a fire for people's fear. And here I had been an introvert and scared most of my life. Well, when I got to my first job, which I went to the General Motors Research Laboratories, it was the largest industrial laboratory, and they made me an unbelievable offer. It's even hard to believe it because they allowed me with unlimited computer power and everything else. My job description was you can do whatever you want as long as you're somehow related to the industry or General Motors in the long run. And I asked them questions. There was nothing I could think of if they didn't have some sort of tentacles in. So it was fine. So I could do whatever I wanted.
Wow.
And with unlimited computer support, a computer person. And also they were giving my wife not just a job, but a career position. And I was getting paid more than double anybody else coming out of Berkeley that year. So still shy, though. But I realized I had the speaking problem. So I went, and you've heard, of course, of everybody's telling people, oh, you have trouble speaking, go to Toastmasters. And I tell people, no, don't. And why? Because what does Toastmasters do? They have you, they get up there, you get up there and speak, and they give you some incremental improvement.
And also you're in a room of other people trying to do the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But what happens is you're sort of pushing your envelope. You're getting to learn a little bit more and a little bit more. What you really need to do if you want to make merely monumental change, you have to be in an environment where you can feel completely safe, that you would know nobody else and nobody else would know you. In that room of Toastmasters, there are other people there that are probably going to be your future or current colleagues, customers, suppliers, etc. So while you're supposedly learning, you're also on display. This is really a scary situation, and not one that's truly well outside your comfort zone. What I did is I took a Dale Carnegie course.
Mm-hmm.
And sitting in the course at the very beginning, as I'm sitting there, the instructor's going over all of the different things that they do and the policies, etc. And he mentions that there are all these awards. There were I think there were 8 awards, including most improved, impromptu speaking, spontaneous speaking, improved for the whole class. There was a whole bunch of them. There were a whole bunch of them anyway. So as I'm sitting there, listen, and I saw everybody else is up and around, and they were all chatting with each other because some of them knew each other, others were just friendly, etc. And I was sort of sitting there by myself in the first or second row. I think it was in the first row. And I'm just thinking, gee, I am going to be absolutely the worst person in this class. But if I try real hard, maybe I can get most improved after several other people do. And we're sort of down to the dredges. And I'm coming from such a low place, I could get that. Then I realized, wait a minute, I am never probably going to ever see these people ever again in my life. I thought, whatever they do, why should I care what I look like or feel like or anything else? I can do as stupid or crazy a thing as they ask me. So I decided no matter what they asked me to do, if they asked me to crawl like a snake or cluck like a chicken or jump up and down, I'm going to do it so good. I'm going to do the best possible way I can. I'm going to imagine I'm that snake or I'm that chicken or whatever. And that's what I did the whole time because I wanted to learn as much as I could and I had no fear. So keeping in mind that what is your comfort zone doing? Constantly keeping you in fear. Because you're going outside. And there's 2 parts to your comfort zone. One part is your own, and this is what everybody talks about, your comfort zone of moving outside so that you're comfortable. But as I mentioned, the environment at the beginning of this episode, all of your friends, family, all have comfort zones of their own. And your comfort zone intersects theirs probably to a great extent. And every time you're slightly outside of theirs, even if you're in your own, they're telling you, no, don't do that. Or they're telling you, don't you want to be careful? Or I would feel uncomfortable you do things like that. Well, now imagine you're stepping dramatically outside your own and way outside theirs. Now, in some cases, it may be raw jealousy. That's a big possibility in a lot of cases. But many times, even if it's the best of decisions for them, that they really feel that your interest is their interest and they really want to help you, quote, protect you. That's keeping you inside what they feel is comfortable or safe. Mm. So here I'm in a situation where nobody I know, and this is what happened with what would happen with Toastmasters or with family. And I urge people when I say go to something like Dale Carnegie, I said, and by the way, don't go with anybody you know. Don't bring a friend along because everybody wants to, come on, you and I, let's go together. You have just limited your possibility of success greatly. So there you are in basically your own little experiment. Well, it turns out that at the end of the course, I had won every single award, including overall best student of the course. The only one I didn't win was most improved. And when I got up and gave the speech at the end and told them what I did, some of it referred to some of the things about this comfort zone and how I did it and what I did, and that I couldn't even imagine having done well.
Today's episode is sponsored by the Business of Bravery's book club. And before we get back to the conversation, I want you to hear maybe 6 reasons why you might need this book club. First reason, you have had the same New Year's resolution to read more every year for the last 5 years. Reason number 2, being a creative entrepreneur is sometimes a little bit lonely. Reason number 3, you're curious how other creatives run their businesses and you kind of want to pick all their brilliant genius minds. Reason number 4, you love authors, you love their books about how stuff is done, and you want to just get as much of it as you can. Reason number 5, you love the Bare Naked Bravery podcast and you want as much of it as you can get as fast as you can get it. Reason number 6, you have had a few too many business or life emergencies last year and you wish you would have had a trusted group of fellow experts to help brainstorm. So introducing the really rad, self-propelled, creative group of entrepreneurs who love what we do and love doing it in really unique ways. Your monthly membership includes a curated book of the month, a monthly book club meeting where we talk about the book of the month, but it's not required that you read the book of the month to attend the meeting, so rest easy. It's also not required that you attend every meeting live because all the calls will be available afterwards for future reference. You are also a member of our private Facebook support group, and you get access, here's the cool part, to live Q&As with our authors. So anytime I interview an author for the podcast, you'll get to attend the interview live or watch the recording soon after. And you can also submit questions for the episode and even participate in the exclusive Q&A following the initial interview. You also get a welcome call with me because I want to make sure that everyone who joins the book club is in the right place. So if we decide that it's not the right book club for you or not the right membership thing for you, then I'll totally give you a refund. But we get to talk one-on-one because I want to pick your brain. I want to get to know you. Membership is $15 a month, and if you use the coupon code, one word, Bare Naked Bravery, you get your first 2 months for $5 each month. You can join us by visiting businessofbravery.com/book club. Again, that's businessofbravery.com/book club. We would love to have you join us. That is all. Let's get back to the conversation.
I mean, it really says a lot that you weren't awarded the most improved.
Right. Yeah. And what happens there, and this is what I believe, because I analyze everything. I'm always asking why about everything. I would imagine that because everybody, yourself, myself, etc., when you're out in public or doing different things, you have things that you'd like to do and like to say. Maybe you'd like to jump up, you'd like to whatever, spin around, whatever in the middle of the street, and you don't really care, but you don't. Here I did all of those things and said all of those things that were in my head while I was there. And all of a sudden I realized that, hey, not only are people okay with it, they like it. So really what happens is a lot of the things when we turn around and act natural turn out a lot better than we thought.
Which is quite remarkable that the things that, not only are our fears not that big a deal, but that they are something that we can use to our advantage and use like a tool. But it also is pretty remarkable that most of the time, the thing on the other side of that fear is either not a big deal or
actual success.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think keeps us from breaking through that comfort zone?
There's a lot of things. And actually, that's what I get into a lot in the different things, everything from my podcast and the book. I'm extreme. Sorry, I should almost apologize for bringing up the book, but I'm so happy. But that's why it was a multi-year project, because thinking through and everything. And we have a lot of different things, but the biggest thing is that ourselves, as well as the people around us. I have a chapter called Peers, Friends, and Family Can Be Harmful to Your Life. And I describe in there that it may not be mean or intentional, although in some cases it is. Some cases, the sister that doesn't want the other sister maybe to succeed in spite of them, etc. There's all kinds of stuff like that. But then there's also, just even with the best of families, somebody all of a sudden starts having attitudes or desires to do things that is very different, can be very discomforting for everybody else, because the thing is to not just think of your own comfort zone, but it's also outside greatly their comfort zone. So if they care about you, they don't want to see you do something so dangerous or this or that, etc.
The families that stick together are the ones that hold each other back.
Right. I thought you were just going to say almost the same thing. The families that stick together get stuck.
Yeah.
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 Exactly.
I mean, it's beautiful, of course. Like family is always there for us. It's the one thing we can't get rid of, whether we want to or not. And I've gone through ebbs and flows of that myself. But I also see that in just colleagues as well. I think one of the drawbacks of the music industry is this inability to see the other options,
right?
Because of what is quote unquote norm for the industry, or like what you're supposed to do once an album gets out. You do this run of 4-month tours in these different cities, and like the norm is the thing that is standard, of course, because that's what a standard is. But I have seen a pattern in the musicians in my realm. The musicians who are willing to do something different are the ones that end up getting further.
Right.
In various ways.
Right. And it has to be something whereby they not only do something different, but they're willing to boldly step out with confidence doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You take a look at like somebody like Prince.
Mm-hmm.
Not only so different, but if he sort of was shy and sheepishly doing it, sitting down on a chair or something like that, dressed in a suit and tie, it might not have looked or been as revolutionary.
Right. I mean, same thing goes for David Bowie, Lady Gaga, like all of that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's talk a little bit about how when you are trying to push out of your comfort zone and get way out there, you still need a measure of safety, right?
Well, yes and no. There's two parts to it. When you're pushing out of the comfort zone, but it's kind of like, I want to put only one foot out. So what happens there is you have different things that go through life and go through change that affect as to how much you're willing to do or what you're willing to do. So, for example, if I hadn't had some repeated successes, I might not have been willing to go on my own into that Dale Carnegie course.
Mm-hmm.
But I had other things. But I also had enough fear of experiences that did not go as well as I wanted it to, so that I knew that I felt that nervousness, etc., when I was just going through life normally, quote, normally. So you have to really weigh different things. What I try to get with and try to promote for people is for them to turn around and take a look, not just at what they're doing through the comfort zone. That is not that they're breaking out, but to start off small and build successes. My life, and that's where the book title comes in, Mechanics for Breakthrough Success, because I look at breakthrough success is not you've made this supersonic goal that you've set. No, because whatever your goal is, and I'll use the idea of an airplane. Airplane is built to, say, reach 32,000 feet altitude, particular plane. As it approaches 32,000, it starts leveling off. Whereas the first few thousand feet, it's on a steep angle, going very fast. We say in mathematical terms, we say it's asymptotically approaching that 32,000 feet. Well, what happens with a breakthrough is as you're getting close to that, all of a sudden you're seeing other opportunities, other things that are beyond and new and different. And then you say, wait a minute, I want to go there. And you just literally break through to 34,000 feet because you've adjusted the wings or you've adjusted the tail, etc. And now you're at 34,000. As you're approaching that, you realize, wait a minute, I can do this, and it'll get us to 37 or 42. All of those things are similar to breakthroughs that you have. Now, those are sort of modest or minor. But for example, I thought I was terrible at languages. I had actually turned down the language school at first, but the fears that they built up in language school that if you fail, you're going off to war, that's what made me accomplish it. Really,
it's a hard sell.
It was a hard sell. Actually, it's funny because that professor from Russian language school at the end that sat down with my friend and I and said, decide whatever you want to do. Having done this, law school, medical school is far easier. And I had looked back and said, yeah, people had committed suicide, people had nervous breakdowns, and there's all of this happening. And yes, they said they were going to fail out most of us. And if we were failed out, they would push us off into advanced infantry training and go off to war. So when I went back years later to thank him for the statement that he'd given me, and I didn't tell him much more, but he said, I don't understand what it is, but you were the best class we ever had, and we never had a class like that since.
Wow.
Well, now I could take that as a pride, or I could really take it as what it really was, because the distribution of IQs in each class was probably the same. But the difference was the drive and the fear that we had to succeed and to make sure we were at nowhere near that cutoff line were what drove us to be the best.
Which is impressive. I think about that plane flying that S curve up to the 32,000 feet. And I think that a lot of that, the plateauing of getting to your goal, is that lack of hunger to get to the next thing.
Lack of hunger, and sometimes also the not belief that you can do it, and also not recognizing, not open, as you mentioned before, opening up your eyes and recognizing what's around you, seeing what's around you. And the word that you mentioned is key, that I use often, plateau. You may have heard many times it's referred to an exercise that your body hits these plateaus. Well, it was proven to me by a person who taught me how to lift, how to exercise. He was a champion power lifter. He actually won the Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico heavyweight division. So when I say he was a champion, he truly was.
Whoa.
And he was a good friend of mine, and he took me to exercise because I was complaining my knees were really sore and bothering me. He says, well, build up the muscle around it. And he took me, and the results, I've never seen anything since it, anything like that, any place I go, etc. But I exercised with him, ate with him, everything for 3 months and 1 week. And everybody's walking up to me, what'd you do? How'd you do this? Could you show me, etc. And it was that fast. Then I took exactly what he did when I went to graduate school, because I was under a lot of stress and I wanted to reduce that stress. So I started exercising. I just followed exactly what he told me. By the way, you'll often hear people say, oh, I spent 2 hours at the gym. I spent this. And if somebody asked me, I would reply to them, because I never spent more than 40 minutes, 3 times a week, never split routine or anything else. And I became second biggest at a big California gym. Wow. Never taking any supplements, never meaning to do it, etc. I was just doing what he told me to do and exactly what he was doing. And this is something that I focus on a lot, and I have a chapter on it as well. I call it Copy Well. Master what the master has already done. He was the master. I took exactly what he already done, had taught me, and I did it exactly that way. And even my dissertation supervisor asked me to show him, and he used to come with me to exercise on a regular basis. But it was so important what he did about the idea of plateauing. When all of a sudden I would feel myself plateauing, because your mind adjusts and you're striving to get to a certain goal. And you say you're going to do 10 or 12 repetitions of something, and you're getting to the ninth one, it's going to be really, really hard. And 10th one's going to be almost impossible. And you'll have trouble making the 11th if you ever get to the 12th. What he would do is, if I was like that 2 periods in a row, on a Monday, say, and a Wednesday, on Friday, he'd go and throw an extra 15 pounds or so on the weight. And I'd find it easy. And all of a sudden I'd go rapidly up again. He taught me over and over and over again, there was no such thing as a plateau. What is plateauing is in your mind. It's that idea that you think this is where you're going to go. And the mind plays all kinds of tricks with us.
So you're saying the secret to breakthroughs and the secret to plateaus is never letting yourself reach the goal.
Well, no, I don't want to say that. Just, no. But keep on allow yourself to have new goals.
Yeah.
I'll also often ask, if I'm meeting a high school student or somebody says, will you talk to my daughter or something? I just spoke to somebody's daughter Sunday, as well as a couple of weeks ago. I was at their house, and I asked her what she was going to do and what she was planning on. And like most high school students, I'm going to go into this and I'm going to do that, etc. And I said, that's great. And she wanted to go into a school that was a little bit more specialized. And I said, well, keep your eyes open, because what happens and what we all find out is right now you're familiar with science, languages, math, English, maybe history. You don't really know what those can lead to. Mm-hmm. Not in all the different facets. Just as I got into college and I found all the facets. When I got into graduate school, I found more facets of a PhD program in economics than I had ever thought of. So what happens is you have to leave yourself open so that as you strive, it doesn't say you shouldn't have a goal, but as you are having a goal and you're reaching that goal, remember that even if you change your mind and decide to go off in a different direction, you still have learned a lot of skills.
Right.
And it's all right to change your goal with purpose. And I underline and put all caps, with purpose, and not just change it because it's easier or comfortable.
Yeah.
If you really want it, if you really want something, you can do it, but you have to really push to do it. Now, sometimes people have to start off with mini goals and mini successes. And what I look at is, for example, keeping a nice lawn. Now, people can wonder about this. I have a whole bunch of neighbors that they will do their lawn. When they do their lawn, well, most of them hire landscape companies that do a poor job. But they will go and spend a weekend working on their lawn. And it's horrible. You're working all week, then you spend a weekend working on the lawn. Now, if you really truly love it, that's fine. But most people are complaining and sweating and, oh, gee.
My dad called that character building. He'd wake me up every Saturday morning and go, it's time for character building.
Well, to build a great lawn, as it turns out, you have certain things that have to be done. The lawn has to be mowed. The front has to be mowed. The back has to be mowed. You have to put moss killer down. You have to put lime down. You have to spot weed, et cetera. There's a whole bunch of things. Well, if you keep them all as separate things as opposed to trying to do everything, and you go out and do one, most of the ones that I have take 15 to 20 minutes to do. Some of them take a half hour. Mm-hmm. So I could keep a lawn better than everybody else in my neighborhood by what? Doing these mini successes and feel very successful both overall and individually. Whereas if you try to do something like I'm going to get a graduate degree or I'm going to get a college degree in organic chemistry, okay, build 17 goals along the way. Everything from the prerequisites to the beginning course, et cetera, so that as you're doing it, you can feel multiple successes. And as you're doing it, realizing that if I'm going to do this in organic chemistry, I'm going to have to stand up in front and give things to learn how to speak well, learn how to write well. Those are all goals and all mini successes.
Yeah. All of this stuff is so valuable. I wish we could talk for hours and hours. I'm so grateful. I mean, plateaus, mini successes, deviating from your plan, developing fear, all of these things are just right up our alley, and I'm really grateful that you could join us today. Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the conversation, and yes, I could talk to you. If you were closer, we'd stop by in someplace and have a beer or coffee.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's make a date.
Okay.
Your brave takeaway from today's episode with Thomas O'Grady is actually to check out a couple of my favorite episodes of his podcast called Life Unsettled. The links and the little sound bites to those are in today's show notes, which you can check out by going to barenakedbravery.com and searching for Thomas O'Grady. It should be at the top if you're listening to this really recently. Anyways, Thomas and I, regardless of whether you listen to my favorite episodes, you should check out his show in general. But Thomas and I would love to hear all about your favorite parts of today's Bare Naked Bravery conversation. You can find Thomas O'Grady and myself on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all the rest of the places. If you do share and talk about this show, go ahead and tag both of us so that we can cheer you on and see what you're up to. And I want to thank you again for listening, because I know, and Thomas knows, that you guys have a lot that you could be listening to today. We do not take it lightly that you chose our conversation and this subject, which is a very important subject, to listen to today. If you enjoyed listening to the episode as much as we enjoyed making it for you, then I encourage you to give us a review and rate the show in your iTunes desktop app or on your podcast app on your phone. It takes like 30 seconds, and it really does help a lot. You are a part of all of that. In fact, here's what Colton from the US of A says about the show. He says, Emily is great and is talking about stuff that really needs to be talked about. It's inspiring and charming and just what we need to get centered in this troubled times. I completely agree, Colton, and I'm really grateful that you feel the same way. It's so nice to know that you've got support and people surrounding you in agreement for the things that you think are important in the world. Something else I think is important in the world is letting you know that the music in today's episode is brought to you by Music Box Licensing. They are a premier creative music agency dedicated to finding and crafting unique soundtracks. To find out more about all the artists, musicians, and other sponsors of the show, go to barenakedbravery.com/sponsors. And I'm looking forward to being with you next week. We always have good things in store. Until then, though, I have one message for you. It's this: be yourself, be vulnerable, be brave, because the world needs more of your bare naked bravery.